Hello and welcome to episode 67 of Just Keep Writing,
a podcast for writers by writers
to keep you writing.
I'm Marshall.
I'm Nick.
I'm Brent.
And I'm Will.
All right, gentlemen, we're back after a whole month of Pride episodes. So I think we're going to start with that. Will, that's the plan. We're going to chat about how it went, what we thought, and feedback from the community. So
sure.
Will, why don't you start, bud?
Well, I'm going to start and direct. I'll go last for what I thought because I kind of want to ask you guys what you thought first.
Yeah,
so I'm going to start with Nick. What did you think of the last 4 episodes, Nick?
Oh, it's with me over here. Okay. I'll see how it is. I love them.
It's because of my favorite.
Oh my gosh, I've been waiting approximately 1 year and 1 month for this to happen, guys.
You're now.
That's why I invited Will on the show in the first place. I wanted to be the favorite. Winning right now, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So for this last 4 episodes, it was a time to learn and a time to grow. For me, I was pretty excited for this year's lineup, and like it's 100% out of my comfort zone and out of my element. But that's why I love it. Like, it's not something that's in my everyday life and things like that. So Sam's interview was great. I learned so much just from talking with him or listening and talk, because Brent and Will, you guys slayed that interview.
Yeah, you guys did a great job.
That was all Brent.
Yeah, no, you guys killed the interview. I'm a fan of Sam's now. He wasn't someone I've read before. And so I'm definitely going to be looking at Sam more towards the future. A Blade Between is on my queue list of books to read, if you will. But yeah, just really loved it. I felt they were wholesome and they were very inclusive, and there's a lot to learn and gain from.
Awesome. That's so good. And Marshall, what are your thoughts on it?
Emotionally, I feel like I was a little all over the map for those episodes, mostly because when we started with the first one, it was back to, I don't know, kind of a reapproach of the first time we did tried a Pride episode, just me and Nick. It was nice to revisit that and see, and like Nick said, see how much growth has been there and stuff like that. And I thought that was good. The interview with my wife, just getting her on the show was a big deal for me. So I appreciate you guys pushing me to make that happen. The feedback from my family, those that have listened, especially my in-laws, their side, great feedback. I didn't even know some of them were listening, and they reached out. And I don't know if it was, and they listened to not just the one with Kate, but the one before as well. So feedback was great on those. And like I said, emotionally, it was a lot to kind of put myself out there, but I really do appreciate the community kind of being okay with that and letting that space happen. So that was I really appreciated that. And the Sam episode was amazing. And you guys listening to you two grill each other in that 3rd episode, that was for me. I was just like, I don't have to do anything, and these guys are just really, really hitting it. So I loved it. Sam and Sam's work is phenomenal. So if anybody hasn't checked it out, you have to do that. But that interview was great. I think it was a perfect way to wrap it up. So I'm glad we did all 4. Did 4 episodes that month, and it was a great plan, and I thought it was awesome. So thanks for pushing us to make it all happen, Will.
Of course. So I guess my question is, what was your feedback from your family? Was there feedback that you were surprised by that they said to you?
Well, one, the fact that some of them were even listening, and that was a big deal. Some of the community feedback I got too, I know there was a few coworkers that were like, "Oh, I listened to your Pride episodes and I love them." I was like, "You actually listened to my podcast?" So it was kind of those kind of reactions, but the feedback was great. A lot of people that know Katie reached out and were like, thank you for sharing this. I want to make, everything that came out of that interview with her was good. And we had some folks who have queer or trans family say thank you. So that meant a lot.
That's amazing. Now, were these people who regularly listened to the show and you just didn't know it, or did they know you were doing a show about this?
One I knew listened because she's a patron and a coworker of mine. And she helps with the Spectrum Club that I run at Fort Bragg High School. So thanks, Carrie, for the feedback on that. But there were a couple other folks that work at other sites that just know us, from all these years that I didn't realize listened and reached out after they heard that, especially after they heard the episode with Katie. So it was nice to see that people in my little community, in this community I'm very frustrated with at the moment, actually listen to the show. So it means that I feel like I'm reaching a community more locally, if that makes sense. Because it's one thing to get feedback online. It's one thing to get feedback from the Discord and stuff, because you expect that on some level. But to have local folks who I've known for a while not only give positive feedback, but say thank you for sharing, thank you for being open, that kind of thing. That meant a lot, because that means they know us, and that means they know Zoe. And that means they know what we're going through and are there and support. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you before we move on to Brent, what was Katie's takeaway from it? Being the first time she did it, not just being here, but also then being people coming to her, talking to her about being a guest on the show.
I think for her, from the conversations we had, it was a little bit of a sigh of relief when the feedback came, and it was not only positive but encouraging, and liking the fact that she stepped up and did that. You know what I mean? And a lot of her friends know not only she doesn't podcast, she doesn't listen to podcasts either. So it's one of those things where they acknowledged how hard that must have been for her, but at the same time, we're really appreciative. So that was really good.
And since that she's now been on a podcast, did she ever talk about like you being like, oh my gosh, like this is what you do, and I didn't realize like either how fun it was or how scary it was, or like were there any like comments about that?
Yeah, the first thing that she actually said when she listened to it, because of course once I finished editing it, I shot it to her first, and because she had to, and you guys too, but she had to see how it sounded, to make sure she in her words didn't sound crazy. And she's like, "Wow, I sounded good. You did a good job in making me sound good." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of like what I do." So like me cleaning up things and making the conversation flow a little bit in post. She was really appreciative of that. So
that's great. So Brent, what was your takeaway of the Pride episodes?
I enjoyed them. I think that it was definitely that. Okay, I'll be honest. I don't think I would re-listen to some of these conversations just because they were really tough conversations, and I just don't know if I want to do that to myself again. But it was. I think it was good to have the conversation. I absolutely love having Sam on. Like Sam's a friend, so it was great getting the chance to talk to him and kind of learn about his process and how he thinks and whatnot. So yeah, that was good. Overall, I think the episodes were good. It was good to have those conversations. I know for me, a few of those topics, I'm like, okay, I can't listen to that again. But yeah, but it was still good.
Well, then it's a good thing you don't do the editing, huh? Did Sam say anything back?
He hasn't messaged me or anything. But I can definitely check in with him and see. But part of it was because I was out of town too, so I didn't really get a chance to like follow up with him.
So I guess, are you upset with the questions I was asking you? Because if so, I apologize.
No, not upset at all. It's just that some stuff was like I hadn't thought about in a really long time, especially the story about my trans friend. And I was like, I don't want to think about that anymore. So I don't want to like have to listen to that again. And it's not me being, it's not your questions that I don't want to come across that way. It's just that there are certain things that like I have worked really hard to not think about, and I don't want to think about that again. So yeah, it was just but it was still, I think it was still good to have the conversation though. I don't regret the conversation. It's just that I don't know how much replay value I want out of it. But yeah.
I got you. I completely understand because we all know what episode I haven't replayed. We all
I forgot
know
about that.
Yeah, I haven't even listened to it now. Not doing it.
That's funny.
I guess for me, I feel like I'm a little bit on the other corner. I was trying to ask probing questions and things that were challenging. And I guess to like Brent's point, it's because I like to dig deep, which I know can really be, this is why people don't like me. Okay. It's true. That's why they don't like me. I really enjoyed all the episodes. I think Brent,
that's not why we don't like you.
Well, so there's other reasons. That's fine though. I'm comfortable with that.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I want to make you laugh, buddy.
It's okay. I'm used to this. Yeah, I think all I keep thinking about is what can we do next year to dig deeper and also have fun and challenge ourselves some more. So I keep thinking over that. But, I guess we'll find out next year. I did want to read some comments that we had in Discord because I asked for some feedback. And tonight, before recording, I definitely asked some feedback. So I want to read some stuff to everyone. And just in case you guys didn't get a chance to check it, because it was literally like 20 minutes ago. This is from Becca. And they said, I love that you acknowledged both the anger and the joy of being queer in a world that still, for some reason, thinks of queerness as a bad thing. I felt seen and understood so many times listening to these episodes, and will re-listen many times just to hear the way you all encourage and support each other on your own journeys. Also, because this is a writing podcast, you all gave me the extra encouragement I needed to continue writing characters who look more like me, because even if all of us write these stories, there will still never be enough. And then I have another one from Jesse in our Discord. I'm more motivated to write about my experiences as a queer person, especially someone who came into her queerness later in life. Then even after listening to your episodes. It's a topic I've shied away from because I didn't feel like my voice was worth adding to the mix, but listening to your voices helped me realize that I was wrong. The Pride episodes brought me to tears multiple times. The vulnerability and honesty was so needed and so refreshing to listen to. It was a joy to have a peek into your lives and experiences, and it was empowering to listen to them. You all kept coming back to the idea of queer people coming home and creating their own version of a home that felt safe and welcoming, along with the idea of a chosen family. The idea hit hard with me as someone who has never really felt like a part of any community. This series was one of my first times I was like, oh, these are my people. I found them. In relation to my own queerness. There is a couple more that I just wanted to briefly.
No, and while you look for them, I mean, this is why we have the Discord, right? This is where we can come together and people can literally tell us what they think about what we're doing, and it helps us. And I love the fact that people are willing to share and that we're actually reaching the community. That's why we started this show in the first place, was for this community, right?
Yeah, and I think this is I'm going to totally get this screen name wrong. So it's LOL Joy Sob Facepalm. Oh, there we go. I said it right. Lots of things struck me, but maybe
right.
But maybe my biggest takeaway was that this is a great model for caring, tough conversations where people can remain present while talking about hard things where there aren't necessarily a lot of scripts. We also had, this was a really great one from Cheryl. Look, everyone, she was like, I agree with what the others have said. It was an episode where you didn't just say, look, everyone, we have an inclusive podcast where we talk about things we want to see in fiction in the world. You actually took the time to reflect back to each other what we've seen, learned, and experienced, and what you each want more of. It showed that you're all willing to go deep with each other and with your work, and in having that discussion, you modeled for us what kind of work really looks like. And it was just super lovely how supportive you all are of each other. I'm all about listening to other people's love fest for each other. So that was just some of the comments. And I guess, how do you all feel from me reading some of the new ones that you just heard?
Yeah, I think the first two that you read came a little bit ago.
Yep.
And I love the fact that people are finding a safe space, honestly, to share, and that we're providing. And that was kind of the whole point of some of those conversations and those topics, and doing 4 episodes in June, right? So I appreciate everybody's feedback. Thank you, Discord.
Yeah, I think I'm happy that they saw the honesty that we were trying to approach this with, because not everything we talked about was we weren't all in lockstep on every single topic and conversation, and but we were. I think I can say we were all pretty honest about exactly how we felt on things, and I'm happy people saw that and that they appreciate it.
I'll echo what Marshall and Brent just said, but it's kind of crazy that I'm part of this. Like, that I've helped build something, that's this supportive, inclusive, and great for such a diverse community. And going back to why we started this, Marshall, right? Oh, we're getting there. And
Yeah.
didn't think. I don't know. It's weird seeing the progress and seeing what we've been able to overcome and achieve, and just kind of what we're able to do for other writers that may not have had it before. Something that I feel like we're doing different than other writing podcasts and communities. So I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm glad it's working. And I'm so ready to keep doing what we're doing and moving forward and making it better.
So I lied. Sam did say something.
What did he say?
You
I lied. I
lied?
just was going through my tweets. I'm like, wait, did Sam reply to me about something? He replied. So he said, thank you, Brent. So awesome chatting with y'all, and so grateful to have you as a reader friend. So it was, So yes.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, sweet. And that was one of the things that I wanted to echo too. What I don't know, Nick. We set out to, kind of start. There are a lot of writing communities out there, and we felt like we had a community when we met a lot of these folks originally, like on the cruises and the retreats and stuff like that. But to be able to continue that and make it and see what it's becoming is it means a lot. It makes you feel good. So I think us being as vulnerable as we were this last month, I think people are feeling like they can also go to the Discord and ask for help and support and stuff like that. And I think that's really important. So
Yeah, 100%.
What about you, Will?
I mean, I feel really touched about it. I know in my questioning, I asked difficult things. So I'm sorry if I got anyone upset. That wasn't what I was trying to do.
I feel bad. I don't want you to feel like you upset me. I guess I just have to.
You don't like being vulnerable.
No.
And you had to recount a painful story.
Yes.
I get it. And I know that was really hard. So I'm appreciative that you shared it. But I'm not going to ever say that I'm not going to ask hard questions again, because I will.
Speaking of which, this episode, isn't that what this is going to be about again?
Yeah.
I just had to say it again because
Shadowing.
Well, see, the thing is, I don't mind the hard questions. I just don't necessarily want to hear myself talk about them again.
All right. Well, you can edit this next time.
Right.
All right.
I got you. I totally understand. And some of the things I think we talked about were hard for me, but I don't feel as I was the one asking. I mean, you asked me some tough questions, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. Feel bad. Okay.
No.
So let's talk about.
Yeah, I don't feel bad.
Well, and I wish I could say that I don't feel bad, right? Or I'm not going to ask hard questions again, because I probably will, because part of it also is just, it's like in me. Like, I'm intense.
Oh yeah, we know. I know.
I mean, I don't mind the hard questions. I just for myself, yes, I don't like necessarily being vulnerable about stuff. And the reason I don't like being vulnerable, I guess, is because I know how easily I crumble. And it's like, if I'm getting into that space, it's like I got to prepare myself to like take the time to take myself back together again after after I'm done with it. So
Right.
I just want to say that that as vulnerable as you were is the height of masculinity, because that's what it means to be a good man, is to be vulnerable and to share your experiences. And I know for a fact from some of the friends have talked to me who are Black and queer that you talking to me and being so open had them in tears, and that they were really touched by it, and it helped them be able to see that they could be more open and honest and authentic and have people who don't look like them be receptive. So I know I didn't text you when three of my friends actually said that, because again, I was surprised that they listened to it. That is a testament to you.
oh, well, that's I mean, that's amazing to hear. And yeah, that's wow. That's all I can say to that right now. I gotta process that.
Here we
Well,
go.
shall we
Just
get
Will
into
leaving everyone
the
wordless.
next set of hard questions there, Will?
Yes. So
I think we spoke over each other, but yeah, go
it's
ahead.
okay. So this episode is going to be kind of a remix, I'd like to call it, from earlier episodes before I was on the podcast. And it was episode 9 and 10. And it was called Social Issues of Science Fiction and Fantasy. And because really this is about an evolution, right? Not just of like the questions I'm going to ask Marshall and Nick, but I think I want us all to look back a year from now and look at our answers today, all four of us. And I want us to look back and be like, how did I evolve? How did I think bigger? How did I think global? How did I become 1% better every day? Because that's really the goal, right? So this isn't about to shame Marshall or Nick about some of the questions that I'm going to ask, because those questions are also going to be funneled through Brent as well. But for the first part is I want each of you to name a book that you felt like had strong political overtones within speculative fiction that you've read in the last year and why you loved it. So I'm going to actually start off with Brent, because I know he's a voracious reader.
So my pick is going to be The Unbroken, and by C.O. Clarke. I know I brought this book up before, but I've got to bring it up again. I loved it because it's speaks to this one space in I don't know, colonization, I guess, that you don't really get to see, like the person who has been colonized and doesn't quite feel like they belong with the dominant culture, but also doesn't quite feel like they're at home with their native culture. And how does that person navigate that journey, and like, where is home for them? And this book does such a good job of really deconstructing this idea that, like, oh well, if all the colonizers just leave, everything will go back to normal and everything will be great. And it's like, well, no, like when you bond and connect in that kind of way, social, political, religious, everything changes. Like when two cultures touch, everything changes. There is no clean break that can happen. And I think I feel like years from now, people are going to look at that book and be like, this was the start of a movement in fantasy, especially, where we really explore like colonization and just how intricate it is. So yeah, that's my pick.
Awesome. And Marshall, what is your pick?
I like Brent's pick, but I haven't finished the book. I loved it though. I love what I've read so far. I'm gonna go. Will you let me do Riverland?
Yeah, I want you to talk about how you think that's political and what it addressed and things like that. Yeah, go ahead.
So the question is something more on political lines, or addressing something that
It's a
is
social issue,
I-
right? So any social issue can be political. So if there's a social issue that you feel like Riverland touched and explored, then talk about it.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay with that pick. I'm gonna go with Riverland, and the main reason being is because it's something that kids. Working at a high school and teaching children, and seeing levels of subtle abuse, verbal abuse, and dealing with parents and being in the room when a parent is being abusive and not being able to do much about it, is hard. And to write a book that addresses, I don't want to say the stigma, but at the same time, like addressing that this is ongoing in many, 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 many households, and these kids don't have a way out of it. And yeah, it's a portal fantasy. Yeah, it is a portal fantasy, but the kids are escaping abuse. They're escaping trauma. They're working through this and leaning on each other. And so one of the things that I always encourage my students to do, especially if we're dealing, if I know something like that's going on, for example, I think I brought this up on the last show, or 2 episodes ago, when I have queer students whose parents outright refuse to acknowledge them in the way that they need to be acknowledged. And it means a lot when there is someone in their life that can do that for them. So I have a few students who I check in with periodically and say, make sure I'm someone that they can come to, even though because they don't have that at home, right? Or send them to the counselor who I know they're close with, so that they can talk to them if they're having a struggle, you know? So I think Fran Wild does a really good job addressing this issue that doesn't get enough press, is bad way to say it, but it doesn't get enough because it happens more often than people want to admit.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, what is your pick?
Yeah, I am actually going with one I haven't mentioned before, which is great. It is The Wolf of the North, by Duncan M. Hamilton. It's a 3-book series. But yeah, but addresses colonialism, and things like that in it, where it's a basic little Viking village that, the Empire ended up finding out that they have some good ore there, so they go in and mine it, and they completely change their culture, how they live, what they're supposed to do, and things like that. Super interesting read, and it's a different take that I've read before. And I've read stuff that's better in the past, but I definitely want to bring this one up.
Great. Mine honestly was Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi. I think it really addresses racism, and I keep wanting to use the word strategic, but structural racism is actually what I mean. I think it is also it's
systematic.
It's a novella. Yeah, it's systematic. I think it also, you have 2 characters who are really endearing, and I think for it being a novella, it's shorter than a novel, but there's so much that was being said.
Yeah, that one would definitely be on my list as well.
I love that book. So I wanted to revisit this because I was re-listening to some topics, and I just wanted to see, where we're all at. So in episode 9, which was part 1, Marshall, you talked about wanting to create a world that deals with classism and racism. And since that episode, I feel like you've really read a lot of different authors, and we've really gotten a much broader view, because you guys were using R.A. Salvatore as a really great example about the Driz series. And what I really want to know is, since that episode and what you've read in the past year and a half, what has changed? What have you read that really blew your mind when it came to classism and racism, and that allowed you to think about your own storytelling and how you can dig deeper?
I can start. I think what I've read is a lot of amazing books. Thanks to you guys for, part of it is prepping for interviews, and in other parts of it are you have to read this book because it's amazing and you have to read it. So the one that's on the forefront of my mind right now is because I've consumed them quite a bit because the show just came out on Netflix, which I started watching, by the way, Will. I meant to text you the other day about Shadow and Bone. But Six of Crows, that duology, and then the Shadow and Bone series, I think does a great job with this. I mean, and I feel like it's dealing with racism, but also classism at the same time, and mixing them because people from all races are also getting have these abilities, right? And so they're butting up against different parts of society as they try to move through the world and navigate their powers and that kind of thing. And of course, there's war and all that and stuff involved as well. But I think it's really interesting how she does that. And as far as my own writing, is that part of the question too?
Yes. Like, how has the reading other authors and who are really dealing with race and social issues in a science fiction or fantasy element, how has that made you also look at your own work?
Yeah, it's making me, especially since I'm still finishing the my current work, making me think that especially in revision, which we'll talk about more on the next episodes probably, but thinking about revising my world in such a way to where I'm acknowledging some of the things that were already in my head, but I'm not doing a good job in this draft right now doing it, right? Because I do have these layers of racism, obviously, is kind of on the top, but then there's also I am addressing class, poverty, and stuff like that as who's being consumed by which side in my current work. So that's kind of, it's making me really think about my revision and making sure I'm really hitting those, making sure that comes through in the way that I'm intending.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask Nick a different question because that one was just for Marshall, but I'm going to actually ask Brent a question first. Brent, what have you read in the last year that's made you have an aha moment when it comes to social issues and that maybe pushed you in a way to dig deeper into your own work?
Aha moment. Ooh, okay. I want to say, I wish I had my spreadsheet up that I keep with everything that I've read. Black Sun by Rebecca Ronhorst. I had an aha moment with how she dealt with this role of religion and how it can be, which I already knew, but I just never really saw it played the way she played it, with how it can be this apparatus for decadence and power in a society, and how it can profess one thing and then completely not actually ever live up to it. At least that's kind of what I got from that world, is that that you had that going on. And also that that it is very possible to take these different cultural elements and combine them in a way that isn't disrespectful and also is also creative. I think she said something that I wholeheartedly agree with, is this expectation of BIPOC writers to, when we're creating fantasy worlds, that we have to create them as historically accurate as possible to the place we're drawing from. Whereas white writers, they can just throw 5-headed dragons in and they don't have to answer why potatoes are in Europe when potatoes weren't really there before. They don't have to answer those intricate questions. So I guess for me, I just love that. It was an aha moment for me. It was be bold, do what you want to do with your world, and don't worry about the accuracy.
Yes, exactly. So Nick, this is my question for you. In episode 9, at the 31:24 mark, you had said, in context, you guys were talking about racism and political issues, and you had said you tend to shy away with books that do that. You are trying to escape reality, and you're trying to think of what does the economy look like, the education system in like the future. So I want you to think about like where you were at that time. Do you still avoid things that have a political overtone? And has your thought process changed about how you look at things that are quote unquote political now after having a wider books to read?
Wow. What a question. Damn. So I would say the type of headspace I was in then, I still was very much strictly reading for pleasure. And guilty pleasure at that. So I would say I wasn't well rounded in my readings, and I wasn't challenging myself at all in what I was reading. So I think I don't know. I think I'm one of the most open people right now into what they're reading. As far as like what I'm willing to read, I don't turn away from anything right now. So when it comes to reading political overtone books and stuff like that, it's no longer an issue or anything like that. Like I've been able to bypass my internal biases on a lot of things this last year. So it's really helped out the last year and a half. Oh my gosh.
And let me ask you this. How has that informed your writing, your growth? What do you feel like has been like the biggest shift in your writing since reading so many different works now and being so open to different authors? How has that affected your writing?
I think it just puts more tools in your tool basket. For starters, for me specifically, it's the world building. It's the things that I didn't look at before from an open lens. Looking at things as in a very restrictive lens means you got shit world building. You get a couple things right, but then you kind of muck up everything else. So for me, it's really helped out my world building and my characters. Being able to create diverse characters that are, my main characters have different voices and opinions and thoughts and things like that now.
Awesome. So the next question is going to go to Marshall. So Marshall, you and Nick, and at Mark 41:15 in episode 9, you had mentioned this, and you guys were talking about representation in the
I was hoping
media.
I'd get a timestamp too.
You will. Of Black men and women. And you said something that really stuck with me. Okay. Because I really want to talk about this with you and Brent. You said hip hop culture doesn't help either. And that was in reference to how Black culture has been portrayed. And then Nick at Mark 41:23 had said one of the things that gets under my skin, a lot of people in hip hop complain, and I'm assuming about like representation in the media. Have you listened to your own music? How are you portraying yourself? So I want to talk about this because I think it's really important. And I'm going to use myself as an example for a minute because Brent challenges me all the time. And I think to me, it was also about being nuanced, right? That we need to see multiple different forms of media and entertainment, and that it's not always going to be happy-go-lucky, or it's not always going to be like, this is the thug life. So in that comment, Marshall, to hip-hop culture, can you talk about where you were at now, at that point, and then talk about where you're at now? Like, do you have that same feeling? And if so, why? Like, what is your thought process on it?
I'm going to answer this in a different way. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to do this kind of on purpose because I've told you guys that I've been on this commission locally, right, to deal with the inherent issues in this town. I can kind of leave it at that, right? I was asked to do a presentation, and I presented, this was, 9 months ago or so, or 8 months ago. So I made this presentation, talked about my life, talked about how I was raised, talked about where I lived and what I want to see kind of where, in this town, right? I talked about how I was called the N-word most of my life up until I was, probably in middle school, it dropped off, but other names took a place, right? So at the end of this, and I was given 15 minutes. I took probably 25 minutes. At the end of the 25 minutes, I'm looking at this group on Zoom, mostly white folks, some native folks as well, and one other black guy. And one of the first questions asked to me after that presentation was, well, what about the N-word in hip hop? And basically what they did was they negated my entire presentation and leaning on this stereo, I don't want to say stereotypical, but what I'm saying is leaning on this, well, why, they say it in hip hop and this, that, and that was their first thing. And then that's all they want to talk about. So I am not saying that I didn't listen to hip hop. I grew up in the 90s. I was, Tupac and Biggie and Rappin' Forte and, Bone Thugs and Harmony is still one of my favorite groups, but I don't really listen to it anymore. And a lot of it has to do with, I was kind of getting tired of hearing that word over and over, right? I get why hip hop exists the way it does. I don't have any problem with hip hop. I love hip hop. And I think hip hop culture is amazing. And it's part of being black. It's part of black culture, right? But I think responses like I got that night after that presentation and putting myself out there and them immediately going to hip hop frustrated me because I never mentioned hip hop ever in that presentation, right? That was not even, I never mentioned it. So I feel like that's what a lot of folks think black people have to be and are. Does that make sense? So, yeah, I think I where I was at then was I was just frustrated with being stereotyped and when I, especially growing up in the 90s, 80s and 90s, I people were like, man, you're the whitest black guy I know. And that's because they're all listening to hip hop and they're all watching what black people should be on MTV and all that kind of stuff, right? Or what they think it should be. So I think that's where I was coming from with that comment back then. And where I'm at now is kind of what I said at the beginning of the answer, is I think black people need to be able to express themselves in the ways that we do. But my fear is that sometimes that's the lens the white folks look at us through, and they put us all in that box. And that frustrates me because I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, I'm a writer, I'm a, and I'm all these things. I can like hip hop too, but I'm not going to be, I'm not trying to live the thug life, but I have cousins that do, and I don't care. I love that people can live however they want, right? But I get frustrated living in the spaces that I have grown up and having to begin put in this box because that's all they know black people to be, right? It's a very long-winded answer, and I hope I answered your question.
You totally did. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of like clarify social issues. Well, like when going back to that conversation. So I guess my question for you, Brent, is when you hear that opinion, like tell me your thoughts when Marshall was talking about it.
So I think, unfortunately, if it wasn't that, they would have found something else to invalidate your statements, because that is unfortunately their goal, is to invalidate. Like, and I think that's why that's why, like, you see this. It's weird because I often run into this being black and gay, and white people immediately, and I see it happen all the time. the minute I tell them I'm gay, it's like they breathe a sigh of relief. They're like, oh, okay, you're not one of those black people. You're a black person that you're not really married to your blackness, because
You're not as threatening.
yes, exactly.
Either.
Because they have their idea of what it is. And so anytime they run up against anything that goes against that, they either let that guard down for whatever reason, or they bristle at it, or they try to like crack a joke about it. So I think there will always be an excuse. There'll always be something about like, there's always going to be a reason for them to not listen to us asking for our humanity. It's the same thing you see with gay people. Oh, well, if y'all guys weren't so flamboyant at Pride, or, maybe if y'all dressed a little more conservatively, or, hey, could we chill on the leather? It's always going to be something with the dominant group when they don't want to acknowledge your humanity. And the reason they probably ran to that is because you probably were killing them with a whole bunch of factual statements, and they couldn't handle it.
I asked that tough question because I want to also put it back in a relationship to writing. How has that made you want to write more nuanced characters, that are black? I mean, has it not? Like, let's talk about like the evolution of like what you see in literature and then what you're really trying to get across.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is that, and it's I want to say it's easier now, I guess, because of how geek culture has really invaded pop culture. But if I'm writing, depending on what I'm writing, if I have a black character, why can't the black character sit around and play D&D with his buddies, right? Without getting shit for it. Why can't the black character, I don't know. Does he have to have an Impala? Does he have to listen to hip hop? Does he have to have a system in his car? Like, those are the things that I get frustrated with. So for me, I want to see, I'm my goal in writing black characters, obviously going forward and in writing I'm already working on, is that they are actual people with humanity, like Brent said, and it's not going to fit the stereotypes that are expected, because that's what they want. That will make them feel comfortable, and I'm not here for that anymore. Like, I'm tired of making people feel comfortable. Like, I can talk to anybody. I can sell anything. Like, I'm good with people, but I'm at the point in my life at age 42, and my wife and I have been talking about this a lot. I can blend in really well and get along with a lot of people, but I'm kind of tired of certain folks, and I don't give them as much time anymore. And I'm pretty close to telling a couple people off. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I want to see characters doing that. I want to see characters calling out the racism when it happens and not brushing it off. Right. And that kind of thing. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess I'm still kind of ranting from before. So
no, I don't think you're ranting. I think this is I'm throwing, I would say, a hard question. You have to think about it. And it's not scripted. I didn't give these questions to you beforehand. So I think everyone's doing a really great job.
Oh, we know, buddy. We know.
Sorry, here goes. Will's going to get the hate from everyone.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Brent, we're doing fine. No, it's good.
I know. I guess for Brent, my question to you is, when it comes to social issues, and when you're writing, what do you want to grapple with? Like, what do you want to write about and be like, especially like we've talked about this, like on the Pride episode, about the humanity, showing the people the humanity, and that there's some people want to do such and such, other people want to do such and such. So what I always get from you is that you really want to write a nuanced human experience, so talk to me about like your goals. Do you shy away from political issues? Do you lean into them? And I want to say quote unquote political, right? Because I feel like if you are Black in America, it is suddenly political. If you are gay in America, it is political. And then when you meet those intersectionalities, it's like, America sometimes throws up their arms and be like, I don't want this. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, though. I definitely. So I guess I've said this before, but like one of my driving goals, I guess, in writing fiction is in a lot of ways I'm writing for my younger self, and I'm trying to give him the words and the stories that he needed to have maybe gotten through some of the things he went through with a few less scars and bruises out of it. And that's a big approach to a lot of my writing. So yeah, it's going to be political because there's there's so many yeah, it's just that I can't help it. It's naturally who I am. I mean, my sister calls me the social activist of the family all the time. But and she jokes, she was like, you can't bring certain stuff up around him. He's going to get passionate. And it's like, yeah, that's what happens. So I guess for me, I don't want to do 101 stuff. Like I'm not explaining the basics of structural issues to a dominant audience. You should already have this information. And if you don't have it, then you're probably not my audience. Like I want to dig into the intra-community issues, the issues that like, the intersections, like, the things that like, okay, we both may be of the same race necessarily, but we have class issues, or we have issues of religion that divide us, or even and it's interesting, like even within the within the gay community, there's issues of attractiveness, of pretty privilege, of people who are able to skate through the world being awful because they have a set of abs, so those are the kind of things I want to explore.
Word.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, we saw it with that one politician, Aaron, whatever his name is. The dude is horrible congressman. But because he has a nice body, these white gays were lusted over him and talking about, oh, well, maybe we need to, accept him and bring him into the community and show him love. No, fuck that. You are horrible. I don't give a shit. You came out finally. Like, you made it your business to attack your own people. So anyway, don't want to diatribe, but what I kind of want to get at is, like, in my writing, I want to dig into the intra-community, because I think in intra-community issues is where you find the really nuanced characters and where you find the really interesting things. Because I thought about something Marsh was saying, like, the person who listens to hip hop. Like, I think about myself, like, I love hip hop, but I also go to raves. And it's like, those two things, though, that say in the stereotype, though, that say jive, but then I have to correct people. I'm like, well, house music, EDM music is actually black music if you actually knew the thing you were digging into. So I think a lot of these things that we think of as stereotypes are things that aren't necessarily for a certain group of people is also due to just a lack of understanding of history. And, so yeah, to make a long story short, I just want to get past the 101 stuff and really dig into like the intra-community issues and dig into how rich history is for most cultural groups.
Thanks for answering those tough questions. So I just want to go over to what Nick originally said at Mark 41:23. One of the things that gets under my skin, a lot of people in hip hop complain about, and I'm thinking maybe representation. Have you listened to your own music? How are you portraying yourself? And just for the audience, because you don't have the video feed, Nick is having his hands over his eyes like he is ashamed. But this is important. So I want to talk to you, Nick, about where you were then and what you think about what you said, because I'm assuming from your body gestures you're embarrassed. But I want to talk to you about like where you were then and where you are now, because that's super important.
Oh man, yeah, I hide my head, man, because it's so baffling. I know what I said. I understand why I said it, but I also know that what I said was through a white lens. As simple as I can say it. When it comes to issues of how you present yourself, how you act, how you do this, how you do that, there's only one standard people are looking at or were looking at, to say, hey, if you act like anything other than this, you're wrong. And I think going back to that time frame, that's kind of what my mindset was. Like, if you want respect, you act respectable, quote unquote, right? If you want to be treated this way, you act this way. But really, all that shit's just a sham. Like, and I realize that now, and a lot of that's through my reading and my writing. One of them, I love this book. Can't wait for the rest of the series. Legendborn. Such a good book that really addresses what I was thinking and what was wrong with it. Because even if someone does act a certain way, represents themselves a certain way, do things a certain way, or I'll just say it the white way in a lot of things, does not mean they get the same treatment. Does not mean they get the same respect. I think that was that was a lesson I learned without realizing I was learning it. And that was just through my reading. So, yeah.
Awesome. So I guess I'm going to throw that back to Marshall and Brent. You know, hearing Nick's, what he said, and then hearing his journey, how does that make you feel?
I guess I'll go first. So what I will say to you, Nick, is that it probably was a white lens, but I will tell you, I have many family members who feel the exact same way, who say the exact same thing, and I'm always the one that has to battle them on it. But I think there is, and that's why I'll go back to intra-community. There is this idea that the only way we will get past oppression or being viewed negatively is to be respectable. And it's like, I always have to point out, Martin Luther King was wearing his Sunday's best and they still hose them down like a dog in the street. Like it doesn't matter. Like, just there's some people, there's people that literally, no matter what we do, there will always be something wrong with it, or it will always be the only thing we can do that would make certain people happy is to be dead and go away. And even then, it'd probably still be an issue. Well, because you know what? In fact, it is still an issue. I'm thinking about it now. There's the town where I'm from in Louisiana, there was a hotel built over a funeral cemetery that was mostly black people. And they didn't even take the time to let the families get the chance to get the bodies out of the ground. They just built the hotel right over it. So it's like, there's literally no point in our life where anything, even after our lives, anything we can do that will get us to get basic, decent humanity and respect. So that, and knowing that, and I'll also confess, like, when I was in, I think, high school, teenage years, there was a point too where I also felt that way, where I felt like, oh man, well, maybe if we stop cussing so much, maybe if we stop saying this word, or maybe if we did this, they'd leave us alone. But the truth is, they'll never leave us alone. There's always going to be something that will disturb them and bother them, and be a reason for hatred. And I think, for at least from the black side of it, I feel sad for them, because I know where it's coming from. It's coming from this idea of, like, trying to make sense of this hate. And it's like trying to understand it, trying to make it something that you can calculate and figure out and dismantle. And the truth is, it doesn't make sense. So there's nothing you can do that will make that go away. So, yeah.
Brent, you bring that up, and it kind of reminds me of two quote unquote religious sayings, right? And when people say, oh, you're sweating like a whore in church, or just because you put lipstick on a pig don't make it pretty, right? Yeah. Like those type of comments, I feel when we allow that type of thinking, you ruin what you're doing. Like, and it perpetuates something that's terribly wrong. I'm flabbergasted by this news of Louisiana and their damn shenanigans. Like,
yeah. So they built the hotel right on top of the cemetery, did not even let the families get a chance to try to move their loved ones. It was just...
Well, I hope they're getting haunted by a bunch of black
So
folks.
apparently the hotel is very haunted, and we all say that's why.
Good.
So yeah.
Is this Lake Charles?
Yes, Lake Charles. Yes, this is Lake Charles. And it got
Ooh.
screwed up pretty bad by one of the last hurricanes too. So and I was like, karma.
Oh man, bad karma. Yeah. I don't know, and I'm gonna kind of piggyback a little bit on what Brent was saying. I also have folks in my family too. It's the same thing, right? But kind of what to go back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. It doesn't. And like Brent said, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to keep it to myself here. It doesn't matter what I do. Okay. I'm still going to be the angry black man to the people I work with, certain people I work with. I'm still going to be the only black guy at my golf club. I coach the golf team. I've been there 10 years, right? I have been a paying member and up on my bill for almost that whole time, right? And I still get shit from some of the staff when other people do the exact same thing. It doesn't actually matter what I do. I could be like Brent was saying, I could be wearing my Sunday best and go out there and still get shit at work, and I'm still in trouble again, right? Why are these folks allowed to do X, Y, and Z? And if I even just think about doing X, I'm close to losing my job, right? The only way out is to leave. And this is something that I told that commission that I'm on for the city right now is I want to leave. I don't want to be here really anymore. I just don't. I'm tired of this shit, right? I'm not saying it's gonna be better anywhere else, but at least I would have a larger community to immerse myself in, right? With some more diversity, right? So yeah, it's frustrating. I don't think there's anything I can do to change their minds, because like Nick was saying, that they're going to look at me that way no matter what I do, right?
Yeah. So I just have one more question for the three of you. Is what keeps you writing social issues into your work?
For that, for the reason I just said is because when I publish something and when they see the shit that they've put me through reflected in a certain way on the page, then that's what I want. That's what I want. I want them to see my name on a book and be like, oh, that guy I gave so much shit to. Oh, look at him. You know what I mean? And I don't care what they think, but I want to show them that I am using the shit they're putting me through to make better characters, to make better worlds, and to make myself better, you know? I had something else I was going to say, but I'm going to leave it at that.
Nick?
Yeah. For me, it's about representing those who are underrepresented, bringing to light issues that are swept under the rug. And as a white writer, I will naturally have I feel like I would have a naturally broader audience because I'm white. And okay, I just feel like as a white writer, it's almost my responsibility to talk about certain social issues, because I may have the opportunity to have a bigger net to cast and a bigger audience who's initially going to read me. I think and I know you hate this word well, as a white community, we need to be better about talking about these things and being open to being wrong about our previous thoughts, because we're all in this together and we got to do better together and be inclusive.
Also, I no longer hate that word, because after Brent schooled me on it, I really understand the point of view, and I get it. I get it now. So thank you for educating me, Brent. I appreciate you doing the hard work.
Sure. Yeah. I guess my answer to that question is that I guess it's twofold. Well, it's twofold, but they also overlap. So I write. I think it goes back to something you said, Will, is that my existence as a Black gay man in America is just inherently political. Like every breath I take and it's inherently political. And I do like write fiction to figure out my own shit. I'm unraveling myself in fiction, and I guess that in it of itself is a political act. And I also think of this too, like the mere fact that I am Black and gay and writing fiction in America would have been complete, total fantasy to my ancestors. That would have been like, what the hell kind of shit were you smoking to think that that's even something that could be real? So my every word that I put on the page is political. But as for why I actively think about putting politics into stories too, I think, look, the people who don't agree with me or who think that just me being here is a problem, they are loud. They are loud. They are vocal. They do not mince words. And I think anyone who wants to resist those voices has to be just as loud and just as unflinching with their words and their imaginations too. So,
and this has been Just Keep Writing.
Well, you're not going to say why you keep writing, Will?
No. Will, what keeps you writing social issues?
I'm not sure I do yet.
You got to answer at least one question.
I'm not sure I do. You know, I'm not sure. So that's why I can't answer that really per se.
I think the same thing applies, maybe not to the same degree, but the same thing applies to you about your existence being political. Like to be queer in America is to be political. To write about the kind of, and I'm gonna use your word here, your profound love that you write about, that's political.
That's a good point. You know what? I think for me right now, just where I'm at today in my headspace, it's hard for me to have any type of analytical look at my work and me as a person right now because I'm so currently upset. So I think that's why I was like, I don't know if I do. When you're right, I do. And you know, in my story, something political is always happening, and it tends to be about class systems or minorities or women. You know, it's addressed in that. But I think it's more like I'm writing about it because it's more built into my experiences. You know, I'm not thinking about it as I'm doing my first 5 drafts. I'm thinking about it like later on when I get feedback from like the 3 of you. And then I'm like, oh, you're right. That is what it is about. Because I don't think I realized about it. And I'll give this example. Someone read parts of Renegada, the book I'm currently working on, and they said, this is really about government control and about systems being messed up. And I just was like, I didn't expect that. But then when I looked at it, it is a lot about trauma and about like where I'm at as far as dealing with how things went when I was a kid and everything.
Yeah. Like, and the thing, I mean, since I've read all of y'all work, I'm just going to end it with commentary on all of y'all stuff, the political I see in each. So, Will, in your stuff, what I saw was very much, like I said, the profound love, that's political. Just 2 men getting to exist and be deeply in love with each other and without any real complications behind that. But you also deal with like questions of power, like who should have it and how it can be wielded. And Nick, your story that I read, like you very much were dealing with the way we discard our veterans and the way that like we throw them back into the world and then we just kind of expect them to float along and don't give them any means to deal with their trauma. And Marshall, yours was very much dealing with like just like how disposable Black bodies are in society, how easily they're wanted, they're used, and then they're discarded. And so so I think so I would say you all definitely do it, and you do it well.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
And this has been Just Keep Writing, a podcast for writers, by writers, to keep you writing. You can find us at justkeepwriting.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to any of us on our social medias, and please jump in our Just Keep Writing Discord channel. Links to all of that is in the show notes. Lastly, please support our show by going to patreon.com/justkeepwriting. We offer daily writing prompts, early access to podcast episodes, and much more. Thanks for listening, and just keep writing.